Malaysia's position, surrounded by sea, islands, and the mainland, make it highly accessible to various nations. This region has seen many human migrations, and there is evidence that the area was already inhabited by Homo sapiens 40,000 years ago. Before sea levels rose, the area we now call Malaysia was part of a landmass known as Sundaland. Over the centuries, Malaysia has seen many different cultural influences and was a trading hub for Chinese, Persian, Arabic, and Indian goods. Later, it was of strategic importance to the colonial powers of Europe. As a melting pot for so many nationalities, let's take a closer look at 5 cultures that had an impact on Malaysia. Number 1. China. Today, the Chinese community in Malaysia makes up around 23% of the population, and they are mainly descendants of southern Chinese immigrants who arrived in the 19th and 20th centuries. However, the history of Chinese-Malaysian relationships is a lot older than that. Excavations of the Sarawak River Delta have uncovered evidence of extensive trade networks with China that may date back to the 600 CE. Historians believe that the local people traded edible bird nests, materials, and spices with the Chinese in exchange for ceramics, metal, and fabric. Although Malaysians had established trade relations, which would have resulted in minor cultural impacts, the first recorded arrival of Chinese people into the area that would become Malaysia was during the 13th century, following expeditions sent by Kublai Khan. In the 14th century, Chinese merchants emigrated to Malaysia, partly due to economic opportunities and partly to escape persecution from the government. A steady stream of Chinese peasants made their way to the country in hopes of a better life. Many early Chinese migrants, including traders who settled on the island of Penang, assimilated into Malay culture. Historically, Malay kingdoms often relied on protection from the Chinese dynasties. Throughout the Ming Dynasty, which ruled from 1368 to 1644, diplomacy and trade increased between China and Malaysia. During this time, the founder and first official ruler of Malay, a Sumatran prince named Parameswara, established a tributary relationship with China, which helped him extend power over the peninsula. This relationship brought with it further trade opportunities, Chinese goods, and cultural influence, as well as helped protect the kingdom from external threats. An influx of Chinese migrants came during the British colonial period, and they had a more considerable cultural impact on Malaysia. Their influence can be seen in the prevalence and popularity of Chinese festivals, folktales, and cuisine. The Chinese also brought Chinese Buddhism to Malaysia in the second half of the 17th century, and Buddhism is currently the second largest religious denomination in Malaysia. China also had an impact on the Malay language, which contains many loanwords from Mandarin. The strong bonds between China and Malaysia were broken after China became communist. The break in faith came in 1949 when China backed the Malaysian Communist Party, which then tried to overthrow the traditional Malaysian rulers. Many Malaysians viewed the Chinese residing in Malaysia as guests and felt that their loyalty lay with Beijing, not Malaysia. Today, there are still some tensions between Malaysian and Chinese residents, although the situation is improving. Number 2. India. Today, less than 7% of the Malaysian population is of Indian descent. Still, there's been an Indian presence in Malaysia for over 1,000 years. Some evidence suggests that there were Indianized kingdoms in the area around 1500 to 1700 years ago, and it is generally agreed that Indian missionaries brought Indian Buddhism to Malaysia around the 3rd century BCE. Trade also flourished between India and Malaysia, and trade centers sent and received goods to and from the Indian subcontinent. Buddhism was not the only religion introduced to the country from India. Hinduism was also brought to Malaysia by Indians. Unlike Buddhism, Hinduism was not spread as a result of an organized missionary movement, but by Indian merchants interacting with the ruling and trading classes. Hinduism also spread through marriage, with Malaysian rulers arranging marriages between their sons and daughters and those of prosperous Indian merchants. Indian cultural influence can be seen in the arts, including folktales, literature, dance dramas, and wayang shadow puppets. Early Malay literature shows distinct Indian influence and is almost wholly based on Hindu epics, such as Ramayana and Mahabharata. The Malay language demonstrates this Hindu influence, with words such as putera and puteri, son and daughter, along with thousands of other words coming from Sanskrit. Malay also has loanwords from Hindi, including dhobi for laundry. Although cultural influences have been coming from India for centuries, the most significant influx of Indian immigrants came during the British rule in the 19th and 20th centuries. Indian laborers flowed into the country, along with Indian colonial government workers. The establishment of plantations and the subsequent need for mass labor led to the further influxes of Indians under the Kangani system. Number 3. The Middle East. Malaysia was a huge trade hub, with goods coming from China, India, and the Middle East. Malaysia has a long and well-established trade history with the Arabian Peninsula. The main cultural impact of the Middle East was that Arab traders introduced Sunni Islam to the area. The religion differed from the traditional societal structure. It challenged the authority of the elites by offering equal opportunities for advancement through spiritual devotion. Islam arrived through the trading port of Malacca, or Malacca. The city was established by Paramasvara, who is credited with founding the Malacca Sultanate. Paramasvara had established a tributary relationship with China, securing trade relations with the Ming dynasty. He also converted to Islam and became a sultan, which attracted Muslim merchants to the port. His trade connections with the Middle East and protection from China allowed Malacca to flourish and help spread Islam in the region. It is now the most practiced religion in Malaysia, with 63.5% of Malaysians identifying as Muslim. Although many people from the Middle East settled in Malaysia, they tended to integrate completely into Malaysian life. During the 15th century, the Islamized people of Malacca referred to themselves as Malays, regardless of their descent. The term Malay was then used for anyone who practiced Islam and spoke a Malay language, meaning that religions and linguistics, rather than heritage, were the criteria for being Malay. However, the country remained tolerant of other religions, and Hinduism, Buddhism, and local religions were still freely practiced. Number 4. Portugal. By the 16th century, Malacca's fame as a Pan-Asian commercial hub reached Europe. In 1509, the Portuguese, who had long sought a sea route to allow more direct trade with Eastern Asia, first arrived in Malacca. However, instead of trading, as previous nationalities were content to do, in 1511, the Portuguese captured the city. The once vibrant trading port declined, as the majority of merchants were unwilling to pay the high taxes demanded by the Portuguese. In addition, the strictly Catholic Portuguese put a stop to the religious tolerance that became a core part of Malacca's cosmopolitan society. The Portuguese were the first colonial powers to dominate Malaysia, and they kept a tentative grasp on the region until 1641, when the Dutch seized Malacca. As the Portuguese had taken over the main trading port in the region, Malacca no longer monopolized trade in the area, allowing new sultanates to emerge, usually at the mouth of a river, allowing them to trade to and from the interior of Malaysia. Although they were not welcome traders or patrons, the Portuguese still had a cultural influence on Malaysia. They introduced now popular culinary ingredients, such as chilies and tomatoes, that they brought from South America. Some historical buildings in Malaysia demonstrate Portuguese architectural styles, such as decorative tiles and arches. As with the other nationalities, the Portuguese brought a new religion to the area, Catholicism. Although Catholicism did not catch on to the same extent as Islam or Buddhism, there are still some Catholic communities in Malaysia. Some also argue that the Branyo dance in Malaysia originated from Portuguese folk dances, and that Malaysian art displays some evidence of Portuguese influence with the use of decorative motifs and certain techniques. Malay contains a number of words of Portuguese origin, such as jendela for window and bandera for flag. The Portuguese had a lasting impact on Malay music, which can be heard in the lightly harmonized styles that developed since the Portuguese controlled the country. They had also brought new instruments to Malaysia, such as guitars, frame drums, and the violin. Number 5. Britain. Britain took over as the colonial power in Malaysia when the Dutch ceded their claims north of the Strait of Malacca in the Anglo-Dutch Treaty of 1824. As we have already heard, the British had a marked cultural impact on Malaysia since they brought Indian migrants to the region. However, the British also brought Europeans and their own culture, the effects of which can still be seen today. Even before they took control of Malacca, the British were exerting their influence in the area. In 1786, they established a settlement in Penang. They rapidly developed the port and were determined to compete with the Dutch-controlled trade port of Malacca. Soon, the settlement became vital for tin and rubber exports, and the state still bears the hallmarks of its colonial past. Of course, one thing the Brits insisted on was bringing their own language. Even today, approximately 60% of Malaysians can speak English proficiently. as the language was used in business and administration until Malaysia achieved independence in 1957. In the 1870s, Britain introduced the rubber tree to Malaysia from Brazil and found that it was the ideal climate to grow this lucrative material. Toward the end of the 19th century, the demand for rubber surged, and by the early 20th century, they had cleared thousands of acres of forest for growing rubber. These plantations transformed Malaysia into one of Britain's most prosperous colonies. After Malaysia declared independence, the rubber plantations came under Malay control, and today, rubber and rubber products are one of Malaysia's biggest exports. Britain created an economic boom in Malaysia and brought about many changes in infrastructure to accommodate this, such as railroads and streets sturdy enough to accommodate cars. For the wealthier Malaysians and the British colonists, Malaysia entered a golden age, and the Brits began to construct lavish buildings that had a marked impact on the architecture of Malaysia. Along with some British churches, cathedrals, and colonial buildings, examples of British architecture include Kelly's Castle in Perak and Penang City Hall. Another lasting impact the British had was on education. Prior to British colonial control, education was informal and focused on religion. The first English school was in Penang in 1816, but the idea of formal education spread throughout the region. The British government opened many schools that offered free education to children. Still, they were separated by language, with the Malaysian people taught in Malay, English in English-speaking schools, and other separate schools for the Indian and Chinese population. While this helped to maintain Malaysia's rich history of multiculturalism, it could be argued that it stopped immigrants from fully integrating into the Malay culture, as they had done in the past. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about the history of Malaysia, check out our book, History of Malaysia, a captivating guide to ancient kingdoms, colonial Malacca, modernization, and the post-independence years. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.